Good evening, all. Welcome home. Welcome to SuperMex Nation. Not just the voice, I'll get to that in a second, the voice of Mexican America, but the mind of Mexican America. A place that you can come to and talk heady, important, philosophical, if not political and socio-cultural issues that affect not just Mexican America, obviously, but the entire nation. But through this filter, a little darker, not quite as light, and a little more left of center than the central part of America. We have a special show for you tonight. It is a little different than we normally do. We're not talking about politics, and trust me, I'm in a good mood to not do that tonight. Sometimes I've told you guys, you just got to get away. You got to live a little bit. You want to make good political, good social decisions, try living a life. That definitely helps. Don't get caught so much in the CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, inundation. Don't just listen to talk radio because you're getting skewed viewpoints that are designed to move you in a particular direction. May not always be good for you. I can definitely tell you that. Sometimes it's good to just get your head out of that mess and live life, talk to other people, talk to other areas that aren't as involved and knee deep in that mess. You want to get into the weeds, live a political life and be around it all the time. You'll soon be not just jaded, but a hell of a lot more cynical than you were prior. So we've got a good show tonight. Like what we did on Monday, we will not, litigate that, and we'll go back into next Monday and get back to the heavy political items. But we do have Friday night again, Fun Friday, cheap date night with yours, and no cost to you, but a cheap date night. Swainbo is back in town, and so we'll finish up and wrap up our about 5 weeks worth of heavy dream utopian high school material from some knowledgeable people that can give you a blueprint. If you're a parent, if you're a student, if you're an aspiring educator or young administrator that wants to know what this thing is supposed to look like, we're giving you that. And we're going to put this in manifesto, brief form and written form, and you're going to be able to go through it and say, okay, you know what, in my high school, we don't do this. Why not? We're giving you something that you can point to and say, this is right. Why are we not doing it? It's handing you information that'll make you better and more knowledgeable about your particular situation, whether you have a child in school or not, whether you teach a child in school or not. All very, very good information. So we'll wrap that up by this coming Friday. But tonight, I got a special night for you guys. We're going to talk to some homeboys that are right here in our part of the neck of the woods in the country. They run a show called The Fighter's Voice, and we'll let them introduce their parts and let us kind of get knowledgeable on what they have going for you, basically plug in their show and what they do. Because there's a large component, and I'll say it for me, in Mexican America that is involved in the fight game in some way or form. We're either fighting or we know somebody that does. Fighting doesn't always mean bad. It could be a good thing in sport and in the cage or in a ring. So we're going to talk about that tonight. But without any further ado, let me introduce my gentleman here to the left and to my right. First things first, go ahead, Richard.
Rich Ortiz of The Fighter's Voice. I'm your host of The Fighter's Voice.
Anything in particular, like background?
Well, I mean,
you a fighter? You come from a fighter's background?
Well, I was raised in it with my mom. My mom was a big fan of the boxing game. No, my mom didn't fight. She was just a big fan of watching the sport, and I was raised watching boxing, actually listening to boxing too, when you couldn't afford the pay-per-views. Right. Back then it was called closed circuit TV. You listened to it on the radio.
Probably have more access to radio listening, right?
Yeah, the headphones, yeah.
Okay.
So just absorbed it as a child.
MMA experience for The Fighter's Voice. I'm co-host with Rich. Like he was saying, with his boxing background, he brings more of a intellectual, in-depth knowledge. Like he has data that out the wazoo. He can name you dates and fights and stuff like that. And then I can come in and I can help add the UFC, MMA aspect to it. I've got like 12 years in the sport. Right. Fought like 3 times in UFC. So I've got like a 10-year, decade-long experience in it. So I can kind of give that color commentary or expertise corner for him when it comes to MMA topics. He wants to expand the fighter's voice to as many aspects of life that people have.
Let's do that right now. So gentlemen, plug your show as hard and heavy as you can for my audience. I mean, we are nationwide, but we do have a large contingent in the area. So I know that, and I think I've said to you, Richard, if not to you, Cole, also, that I have a large contingent of ex-wrestlers and fighters that either I've worked with or that I've coached myself. And when they see you guys on the show tonight, you're probably going to pick up some more fans, which is always good, right? It's always good. So go ahead and plug show. I mean, what do we have with you guys?
Hey, well, right away, please subscribe. That's www.youtube.com/thefightersvoice, and also our website, www.thefightersvoice.com. Hey, appreciate you subscribing and following us. The Fighter's Voice was put together, actually, I am the original Fighter's Voice. The people that know my story, I dedicated my whole career to my son. My son is in heaven, so I had every opportunity to not want to go forth, to not want to come home and just give up on life. But I wanted to keep my son's name alive, so therefore I pushed through it. I had to find something, and behind the microphone became my serenity. Giving people a platform to talk that are also fighters.
Excellent.
So you don't necessarily have to walk inside a cage or inside a ring, but fighting for life. Like your show, you're fighting for viewership. You're fighting for, you know, I've had
trying
a guy,
to educate people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have athletes fighting their injury. You have police officers fighting crime, etc. So now you get the point. The platform is open to anybody with the fight. We've had a person fighting cancer because they're a true fighter. So we put the whole concept together. I actually had Cole on as a guest, and we just clicked together. Prior to that, we did some work together. We were commentating some fights in the cage.
Local around
here?
here?
Yes, exactly. And I knew we just clicked together. And in the middle of an event, and I'll tell you this story real quick, Cole's commentating, he's working, and I really went up to him and said, I got a great idea. And he was on the air commentating. I just had to tell him the idea that came to mind, and we put us together, and the rest is history. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So what do you got plugging for the show?
Just basically the concept of the show is
Well, when are you guys? Let's do that.
Oh, well,
I mean,
right
you guys
now
are
we
on
do-
right prior to us. I know that for sure.
We do the radio show on Tuesday nights.
Yes, Tuesday at 6 o'clock is the Fighter's Voice Knockout Radio Show.
And then the podcast,
Wednesday
the Kick-Ass
night
Podcast.
is the Fighter's Voice
Say that
Kick-Ass
again?
Podcast.
How do we, can we put that up, KP? Their info? That way our people see that also?
Oh
when we get
man,
a chance?
KP is like the man
All right.
and Johnny on the spot.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yes, yes.
It's all
Like
at
us,
the Fighter's
subscribe,
Voice.
follow
for pretty
us,
much
follow
everything.
us. Okay, so I'm seeing that's
Instagram,
Facebook.
Twitter, Facebook.
Oh, you got them all.
YouTube.
I got to get better at this, man. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not
we've-
fighting properly. I
got
got to
all
get
of
better.
them.
I don't have everything yet. What's that last one on the bottom? Visit us at.
Yeah, that's a website.
That's okay. So
Yeah,
that's
that
your
would be like
website. So I see
websites.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
And see what
What's
the
that pink one?
Oh, just follow us at the Fighter's Voice. That's Instagram.
Oh, that's
That
probably
was-
Instagram.
Yeah.
Subscribe would
The
be
red
YouTube.
one's not.
Like us would be Facebook, and then that Twitter one would probably be the follow us.
Yes, exactly.
So you've got Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of them. YouTube. We try to cover as many bases as possible. We don't just really talk about one aspect. We'll talk about a lot of boxing. Like we just covered a lot of the boxing events happening, rankings, things like that. We covered what's coming up in MMA, what's coming up in UFC, what just happened this weekend, what's going on local. Sometimes we'll get guys on that we're able to, like when we had Jeff on, we're able to talk about things that have happened way in the past.
Yeah.
What was MMA like back then?
Which is kind of where segue, where we're going.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's it gives us the opportunity to really look at it because we have perspectives from decade old. I started
Correct.
out back when MMA was real.
I remember.
real
So
small.
full disclosure, and good segue. So full disclosure. So I remember Cole a long time ago. As we say a long time ago, it is long enough, right?
Gonna be
Early.
old school PMA.
Yeah, it was early '90s, Pacific Martial Arts, and I was taking my son, who was a little squirt, 3-4 years old. That was probably more toward back end of the '90s. Back end of the '90s.
So that had to
He
be
was in
the
'96. He was born in
Bullard
'96.
Marks. Bullard or Marks.
It was Bullard and Marks. So I would take him in, and he ended up being a really good wrestler. But we started with jiu-jitsu. I mean, I'm an old wrestling coach, so full disclosure there too. Most of my fans know that. But so I'm an old wrestling coach. I still kind of coach, just select people, small group. You can get picky later. You can get picky. You don't have to work with whoever. You work with who you want to. So I was a wrestling coach, and I was I was fascinated by jiu-jitsu, and I kind of knew of jiu-jitsu in martial arts because I did some training when I was in service, and I'll add my little piece there. But I boxed a little bit when I was in the Army, and I won some titles, Soldier of the Year titles and things like that. So what that does is pyramid structure, right, in service. The more you do, the more access you get, and the more you're allowed to, or they're giving you training. So I was able to train with some additional instructors, not just what you would normally get. And so really fortunate there, and I got to train with a lot of different styles of martial arts. And I had heard about
Ray Mercer was in the Army.
Ray Mercer was too, yes.
Yeah.
Oh no, definitely, yeah, and you
See
get a
what I
lot of
mean?
guys to do.
See what I mean? He's like a Trivia Pursuit box of boxing. It's like you just open up and say, okay, you're
Open
gonna make
up
all
the
the
index.
cards.
Open up the index.
Like we need Trivial Pursuit questions. Rich, you're gonna make them for us.
Sports Trivial Pursuit. So that was back to that time when I got out. So I wanted my son doing a martial art, not just wrestling, because I figured I'm a wrestling guy. I can do that anyway.
Yeah.
And so that's when I first saw you, and when I did see you, you were kind of in, you were out, you were helping coach, but you were also training a lot at the same time to prepare for fights.
Yeah, way back in the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, it was, I think for the most part, it was Ted and Jason.
Ted and Jason. Ted Stobie and Jason Hannon, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll never forget, because I did a little training myself when I could. I mean, when you're a dad, you give up time, right? It was all about my boy. But when I did get an ability to, because I really wanted to learn something myself, Jason, he I learned some things from him, some submissions from the top of the body with headlocks and head and arm combinations.
Yeah, Jason's a real top game guy.
Then in wrestling would be just a traditional headlock, and you're holding the guy and you're trying to pin him. But he showed me some things that basically a much tighter lock, and that's where I did learn to change hand positions that in wrestling are looser or not as constricting because the game is different, right? You're not trying to tap someone out. You're not trying to cut off
their them. You're trying to control their body movement.
But I mean, it's a much more forceful hold, and so I have tinkered with since that time, and I've got some things that I do in wrestling now that are a little different, a little more unique because of jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And because of guys like Jason that exactly. And so and we actually use some of those things with my son Richard. He ended up winning a Greco-Roman national title in the standing position, and it was because it wasn't all like the jiu-jitsu end. It was because we were free to tinker.
Yeah, it gives you new looks at grips, holds, body
that
locks,
confidence.
like
precisely.
Confidence. Yeah, totally.
I mean, I tell people like, you want to be great, you got to be free to think, and that includes combat. If you don't adapt, if you don't alter forms, and you just do the traditional, you should learn those anyway as your base. I'm kind of being egghead about combat myself, but you have to know those fundamentals and those positions. But if you're free to think and you're free to create, that's what sets you apart from everybody else. And that's combat in every form, right?
And creative minds are going to last. The creative ones are going to last.
Yeah.
No matter how many times people try to copy or mimic, the creative ones are going to last.
Right.
And I was kind of talking about media or about radio, but you can also in combat sports.
Oh no, definitely.
Absolutely.
So that's when I first got to meet, and like I said, I learned jiu-jitsu too. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of what the real reason, the main reason I really wanted you guys here. It's kind of like you're updating me. I'm an old MMA guy, and I do watch. And I actually tinkered back then with actually fighting myself, but I just didn't have the time. Son-wise,
it is time required.
I saw the commitment that was that and I just there's no way I'm going to do this.
Sport.
It is. It's a very committed sport, and if you've got young ones and you're trying to earn a degree and you're trying to, I'm just out of the army. I've got to make money. Didn't have consistent.
Really
so I didn't. But I watched and I saw the beginning of what back then was the beginning of the cage, and how the Gracies altered through jiu-jitsu the traditional concept of combat in an arena in a cage. By taking out the big guy that was 290 pounds, right? Remember those old images. So you guys tell me. So where are we now? Because we're talking about in essence 20 plus years. Easily. We're looking at 20, 25 years now that this thing has been around. At least MMA. We'll get to boxing in a second as well. But where is MMA now? And I don't mean just on the monetary side, but what's the progression? Where does it go in terms of the style and the techniques? Because I can say jiu-jitsu clearly altered combat in sport.
Super drastically. In fact, you almost get on multiverse discussions on if guys like Hoist hadn't been as successful in the early UFCs that they had,
right?
What would MMA look like today? You'd probably have just K1. If they weren't as successful as they were, you'd probably have.
Let me back that up from my audience. So UFC being for you guys Ultimate Fighting Championship, which was everybody get in there regardless of style or technique. It wasn't specific.
It was like a proving ground.
Throw them in there and let's whoever's style is the best, right? And then so K1 is
just strictly like kickboxing. It's just more kickboxing. There's no takedowns. You can throw your guy, but that's.
I was wondering about it. So it's you can't. So a guy like me, I wouldn't be able to do much to the guy. I couldn't get in on the body and put him on the mat.
You could totally get a body lock and pick him up and slam him down.
You can do that?
And that's where it stops. You just back up, ref goes,
okay, break. Man, that's doing most damage.
But now that's where the whole Hoist being as successful as he was kind of dictates it. Yeah, so if he wasn't as successful, you'd probably be looking at just K1. So when you have the success of a guy like Hoist and jiu-jitsu kind of becomes a dominant sport that no one's really encountered before, that kind of in one sense, dictated the direction that we were going to go as far as what you're going to see as commonplace MMA today, because you don't have a single successful fighter that is just good at one thing. Back then, you guys were just good at soccer, just good at boxing, just good at kickboxing, etc. Now, if you're not pretty proficient in an array of them, you're not going to be able
You'll be exposed in one of those styles.
Yeah, you'll get exposed in the farm level circuit. You'll never, or the first fight you take on a circuit. Yeah, or if you fight, you have, because that's everything. Is you've got AAA for baseball. Yeah. You've got AAA basically for every other sport. MMA is the same way.
So do we have that now? Because I don't remember that back then.
Well, all you had back then was Farm League. Back then there was UFC, and then whatever.
Is it
else
much
there
more
was.
structured? I mean,
It's not that it's more structured. It's more dynamic, more diverse. You've got UFC, you've got Bellator, you've got places like amateur, like 559 fights. You've got a pro like Compa Combate.
559. That's Luchao.
Yeah, that's Jeremy Luchao.
He's a wrestling dad. He's a wrestling dad. I know his boys on.
And you've got one over in Asia. So you've got these different organizations now that are all becoming kind of top tier, versus when we first started out for the first like 10 to 5 years, there's UFC, and then there's just what everybody else was.
Yeah.
If you weren't fighting in the UFC, you were fighting for somebody else.
Okay.
Which basically translates to, you're not playing for the Dodgers, you're playing for somebody else. You're still playing baseball, but you're getting paid like pennies. You're getting paid, you're just doing your dues.
I remember that.
So,
I remember young kids doing that, and they didn't get much of nothing.
So,
and they were taking advantage, and then you guys know where I'm kind of like, I err on the side of, the people getting taken advantage of. And I used to tell kids that I knew that were wrestlers, and they wanted to go fight. And they would, I'd ask them a question. They were like, how much did you make? Or what did they pay for? Did they cover your hotel? And I don't know. I'm not in your game. I don't know this stuff like you guys do. I just know some simple stuff like, if you're going to get your head bashed in,
you might as well get some
then you better get some money for it.
Yeah.
If that guy's making money off the tickets, you guys jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but if the dude's making money on tickets, the promoter or whoever it is, and the show's good and there's money going in one direction, I've got a young dude over here getting his head bashed in, like, yeah, I just want to fight, bro. I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but I don't know, am I wrong?
In the starting years,
you're right.
It's true. In the starting years, there was little amateur, but like if Luchao was here, Luchao would be like, well, now hold on. If Jeremy was here, because he has what's
that's
called
all right, though. He's
amateur.
management. He's
So,
management.
but what I'm saying is, I can kind of give his perspective too on what they're doing. So you've got the guy that's making all the money for promotion. You've got the guy that's selling all the tickets. And you've got the guy that's taking all the abuse. Now, when amateur MMA first started out, I was on the very hard side of the fence of.
Well, you would know.
I mean,
so you probably were at those points where maybe you didn't get paid a lot.
Well, I think I made like $250 my first fight. But the thing is, that nowadays you have amateur fights where they're not necessarily
Did you get drinks
getting
at least?
paid. Drinks and
Extra
friendly
perks?
ring girls. I don't know how to say it without getting in trouble.
Some other prizes.
Other prizes.
So that's worth an additional $1,000.
But today you've got guys that are fighting for camo, that are fighting for the amateur side. They don't get pretty much any real pay, but at the same time, you've got guys like Jeremy, Richard, anybody else putting on large scale, consistently good shows for the amateur circuit. You're being given a platform in which you do good here 2 or 3 times, you cut your teeth, you get your experience.
Correct.
Maybe we put you up for a belt fight. That's how you're building your brand and your experience. But they're doing it on such a large scale without access to TV.
Do young guys now kind of understand that?
They do now. Guys starting on the sport now
so they're much more knowledgeable.
That there's more education, there's more knowledge. They know there's kind of a hierarchy that they have to go through.
Okay.
I don't necessarily agree with all of it.
I was going to say, so were you in at that time too, like 90s into zeros?
Well, here's the whole thing. From 90s to now, even with the Hoist Gracie and the Ken Shamrocks, now it was illegal back then. Now there's a governing body. Now it's sanctioned.
Yeah, I know.
Now
it was Wild West.
Yes,
it was Wild West.
Exactly. It was basically the very first time I saw it, I had a weird feeling in my stomach, like I just saw a bar fight right now.
Like you were anticipating something bad.
But it was legal.
Yeah.
But it's legal, right?
Yeah. Well, now it's legal. I mean, now it's legal in the states. Before, I mean, they would hit up North Carolina. They'd hit up wherever they.
Anywhere it wasn't banned.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they went into the dark ages.
So that's what I mean by it was like Wild West. I mean, it's whatever the hell.
Right, Cole, it started falling off, started disappearing.
Yeah, when it started to get banned
they
and all that.
They put together a governing body. They sanctioned it, which means, okay, there's rules now. The gloves, there's no
How did they set it
allowed
up? Did they set it up along the lines of like boxing or, I mean, that would be the logical, right?
Yeah, weight classes.
Right?
Yeah, they kind of looked at what boxing was already doing. New Jersey, Texas, Denver, California, a couple other states that already had existing established boxing commissions. Like they'd already been doing it. They already kind of had rules for combat sports. So they kind of looked at them and said, okay, here's some of the extra things we can do. Let's have some discussions. Let's have some summits on this. Let's expand these set of rules to fit what we're doing. And the next thing you know, the athletic commissions were like, okay, well, we're a governing body for boxing. We will oversee your MMA event, and we'll give it a governing body. And that's the first step that led to being able to have legal fights again in certain states. And then once one state recognized it, now California's athletic commission would say, okay,
I remember that
recognize
time.
it. So
I remember that time.
They all started kind of working together based on boxing, existing boxing commissions having to step forward and go, we'll take a chance. What do you got? You know what I mean? Like they had to take a chance and look at some stuff and say, let's open the door. Let's talk about this. How can everybody win? So you had to have guys like
because there was no way they were going to stop it. I remember those conversations. I remember some political people.
We like the idea, but we need to fix it. Okay, we need to fix it now.
There's holes.
Okay, exactly. So you set some standards in place and basically some rules.
Right.
Now you got sponsorships because now they're not hiding anymore. They want to come out because it's popular. And now where it's at today is just everybody wants to buy a fight shirt and be a fighter.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. No, that's deadly true.
To sell their share rights to Conor. They're like, if you want ownership of the company that bad, I'll sell you. Guys like Stallone, because you got to remember, it's not the Zuffa brothers that own UFC anymore. They used to own all the station casinos.
I know, they used to.
They sold it to, it's like WMA or something like that. Bottom line is, it is a actor entertainment industry management company is who now owns the UFC.
So they found a better way to monetize it, clearly.
They are finding the different direction in which to monetize it, I would say. But bottom line is, if it weren't for guys like Royce, which I've gone on record several times, he's even said, I don't care for Royce. I have personal reasons.
I never met him personally. So
I had one interaction with him personally, and that was enough for me, unfortunately. But you've got guys like him, and then you've got people within the boxing commission that saw the light and saw the opportunity there for everybody to have something new that could be good for everybody. So you got to have all those pieces, because without Royce, there's no point. But you have Royce doing his part, and then you've got to have the athletic
Who was the big guy? I'll never forget that image. The big guy that he fought, I think, in the very first one, and he tapped him with the triangle, I want to say.
Was it Chemo?
It's a big dude.
Chemo was later on.
Okay, the dude was, it might have been the first one.
Chemo came with long hair, and Royce was pulling the hair.
Yeah.
But he had to walk in and retire because of
the shoulder. That last fight.
I just remember, I remember a triangle, and the dude was massive.
You talking about the big sumo wrestler.
Oh, yeah, okay.
No top on,
because I'm going to tell you what, because that, I'm like,
It was like
that
watching a
changed
video
things.
game.
Yeah. That changed things.
The gi itself changed things too.
Oh God, the gi changed.
Definitely.
So because now it was, I don't have to choke you. You have nothing on. Great. Well, I'm going to choke you with something I have on me. That's so
dry.
You do know that that's aggravating as hell. I don't know about you.
Hell yeah.
But for me, like, I never like wearing the damn gi. And you put the gi on, like, ugh.
But now after wearing the gi, though, I bet you look at dudes wearing suits a whole lot different.
Yeah, the easier way to tap them, right? I
mean,
there's so many things
Hoodies,
you can do to them.
Suits, collared shirts. I look at that going, the second you make a move, dude, my hand's going right in your collared shirt, and you're done. I'm going to choke you with your own collar.
Simple one, right?
You're not going to land a punch on me, and that's it. And I'll wake you up going, are you okay?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I'll admit, I do. You're absolutely right. I just when I did, so I did jiu-jitsu, right? It was just like, I'm like, oh man, I can't operate. And everything that I did, all of my submissions, I never did anything with the gi. Because I always wanted to. My rationale was, if I'm in combat, I can't rely on clothing or. My thing is like optimal conditions in combat should be something that is like an oxymoron. Combat is always being able to address the situation regardless of what it is. So I always went to arms, neck, and I stayed away from the clothes. But here's another question. So that's the main one, the big ones. I wanted to kind of get a handle on it. So talk to me, Richard, about like boxing and the impact MMA has had, or like synergistically combined with boxing and affecting like a regulatory process for MMA. Clearly boxing influenced MMA.
First let me just say this. Royce was cool with me. Very nice guy with me. I
see how it is.
I sat down, I had lunch with him. He let me interview him back in the day with those little recorders. We sat down and ate at DeChico's.
Maybe he saw you as a competitor.
No, very well with me. Don't get me wrong.
To each their own, I respect, close thing, but no, he was cool.
Like, don't get me wrong, I've always got on record on saying that too, is Royce is without doubt contributed probably more to the birth and
Shamrock too.
Yeah, Shamrock was part, but like, if we didn't have Royce,
that's what I'm saying.
If we didn't have Royce, we wouldn't have had what we have today, because
that
we would have gone in way different direction.
Image of him doing that to the big guy changed my concept of what UFC was going to be.
Yeah, everybody's concept.
And I'm saying, like, from a general standpoint, like a regular dude, I'm looking like, okay, now I'm watching because some little dude just put out this big dude, and that's combat, right?
And that's an
It wasn't about hands.
Yeah, it was hands. Yeah.
So boxing, I mean, where are we? What is it now?
Okay, here's where boxing is. Boxing is now a business, and a lot of people, you need to look at the business part as well, not just the part inside of the ring, but outside of the ring. And Floyd Mayweather, a lot of people don't like his style because he won't sit there and bang with you, but outside of the ring, he's a brilliant businessman. And a lot of people want to mimic his way, but he cut the middleman out. He just happened to be in that opportunity where he was just blessed with so much talent, and he was able to walk away and make that risky move, but had people in his way to give him the exposure that he needed. So he got in front of every single camera and promoted himself. and the rest is history.
He cut out the middleman.
Yes, exactly. As far as that is, boxing, you can express yourself a lot more because now with the UFC, there's restrictions. Reebok, certain sponsors, you can't even get personal sponsors anymore. So boxing allows you that. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know that.
They're restricted. The only one
in boxing.
No,
in
I'm talking about in UFC. They're restricted.
Oh, okay.
To only their brand.
Oh, wow.
Only their brand.
So they
only.
can't deal separately. Once they're in with the UFC,
You have to wear only Reebok once you're in the UFC.
Like if you had
Reebok.
some
yeah, so
sporting-
How long has that been?
3-4 years.
I didn't know that.
So if you had
I
a
didn't
great
know that.
contract.
This is
with
why
Ni-
you guys are on the show to educate.
If you had a great contract with Nike, like Bones Jones did, you can't bring it inside the cage.
Wow.
Yeah, it gets nixed
Whoa.
or it gets adjusted.
Yeah.
It gets adjusted. You can't wear like any Nike wearing apparel in your training videos
Yeah.
or like your workout videos. It's
So
gotta
that's
be
the
all-
business end.
Yeah,
that's
that's
clearly the
business.
business end.
Yeah, in boxing, a lot of the MMA fighters they're not upset. They used to get upset. Now they're saying we're not upset. We want to go in the ring now because of the dollars now.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the money, it's
Right, right.
completely different. Completely different.
yeah.
But boxing is today. There's so many different bouts out there. You got the WBA, the WBC.
So educate us. There used to be
IBF.
3.
Yes, and there was the original one Muhammad Ali had, the Ring magazine.
Yeah.
He had the Ring bout.
Right.
I mean, Jack Dempsey had that bout and went
Yeah.
all the way
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
When you fought, you went to a division, there was only one champion.
Correct.
Okay, I want the champion if you get that title shot. Now they became governing bodies. Why do you get to have the belt? Well, I have a belt.
I got
want
a
to put a
belt,
belt.
too.
And
I got a
remember-
belt.
and a lot of people, and I remember I was alive when they first brought out the WBO, and a lot of people laughed at it. Now it's one of the prominent bouts out there. Actually,
Okay.
Manny Pacquiao has the WBO belt. So it became a big name. We want them to fight for our belt because you're going to make that belt big. Like if
Right,
nobody
right,
wanted the
right.
WBO back in the day, well, Manny Pacquiao had it back in the day, or George Foreman fought for the WBO belt. He was a big name back in the day.
Professional
Different
opinion.
governing bodies, different rules.
And I'm going to ask that question.
Yeah.
This is the question to that. Your professional opinion. I'll always err on the side of Joe America. That is who I am. I mean, you said earlier, beginning of the show, right? The reason I do what I do is to educate America. I educate our people. Knowledge is power, quite literally, but if you don't have access to it, it doesn't quite work. So your professional opinion is that plethora, that monstrous amount more than what it used to be in terms of belts and regulating bodies, governing bodies. Is it better for the little guy, the average guy, or is it worse? How has it improved the station of the regular boxer?
It's frustrating for a fan, and the fans pay the bills. Because you will never
Correct.
ever see a unification. Because not only it doesn't stop there with the governing bodies. Now you got the WBC signing all their fighters are with ESPN, okay? And now you have the zone fighters, and now you have a champion that's signed with PBC. So now you're dealing with networks.
Okay.
Okay, you're not going to have
then
CBS
again,
and ESPN. We're
so-
not going to make that happen. It happened one
So I'll
big
press
ti-
you on that.
Okay.
Then does that help the regular fighter?
It helps the fighter because now it's business.
There's more money.
They're getting paid exactly.
Right. If
There's
they're
more
getting larger
more
networks, they got
opportunity.
deals with Reebok.
Do we get to see the
Should that
dream
help?
fight, or do I get to get the dream career because of the money? So you got to make a decision.
That's an
there.
existential
now, as
question.
a fan, I want to see
Say that
these
one
guys
again. Do I
fight.
get the dream fight or
the dream career? and money.
I like that. I like that.
The dream
that's
fight,
the question,
dream
right?
fight equals that big one-time money, but the
Exactly.
dream career with like a DAZN deal
It's
equals
getting it to it.
lifetime money.
Well, that's stability.
Exactly.
I mean, let's face it. I don't want to go too much in the political.
But if you talk to every fighter, they're going to get upset right now. If you talk to any fighter right now, they're all going to say, "I'm here for legacy."
That's what they say.
Exactly. I'm
That's
here
what
to
they
get
say.
my bills paid.
And I
no
understand.
longer have
Yeah.
a mortgage.
Yeah.
And hey, I never have to work so hard. But there's pride
That's America.
that a fighter takes when you have that certain pedigree,
Yep.
like a Carnelo, who can easily clean out that division. But also
Right.
there's some contenders in there too that can also clean him out as well. So he can say legacy because he has a whole country behind him, Mexico. But of course, that
Yeah.
belongs to Julio
Yeah.
Cesar Chavez, Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, all the famous ones back there,
Yep.
even the Salvador Sanchez.
Yep.
Pepino Cuevas. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Pepino.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Trivial Pursuit boxing.
It's good stuff.
Get your copy at home
he
today.
wants
So
to
are you
risk-
going to be True Pursuit MMA?
he knows his stuff. He knows his stuff.
Dude, let me ask you. So, last question. We're going to finish up
Sure,
here. So,
sure.
I mean, so do you guys is that the complement to each other? You guys have lanes. I mean, you did MMA. You've been in boxing for a lifetime.
I'll tell you a quick question. It's
There's
real
some
fast.
synergy
And
there?
I'll be real fast, okay?
Uh-oh.
I brought him on the show every time we did MMA. But everything, we just got along great, though. It was great content. We just mixed in great. So he goes, I don't want to come on the show now. I'm going to go when we're doing boxing. And I said, okay. And I said, I'll see you Wednesday.
Then
I had a boxer on there.
You make a
And it was
boxer.
I kind of pulled him in there.
I do that too.
So he did it. So I asked the questions that would lead him up to his expertise as far as, hey, weight cutting is the same in MMA
It
as it
is.
is boxing.
It's the
So
same.
now he had content.
Yep.
You see, now it was there, and we just worked together.
Yeah, there's no way around that.
I
a lot
could
of them
not
are similar.
ignore the experience that he had or the talent that he had to only use them on one content.
Correct.
No, so we had to do what we had to do.
So again, a little disclosure. I'll say it, even if you won't. And I know you'll probably correct me, but Cole did work with young guys, young kids, and I'm not talking about high school and college age guys, but he did. You rolled around, or kind of rolled around. My boy, he was little, but you did work with young kids in a coaching capacity. As an adult, giving back a little bit. I'm sure you weren't getting paid a mint to do that, but my point is that he did. And so, I always look for that, you gotta, on my show, it's about finding some common ground, some commonality, and some silver lining, because there's way too much negative in this country, that's for damn sure, right? But, something like this, I've had a good time tonight. You guys have educated me a little bit more on some clear topics. I could probably sit with you for hours and hours.
Easily.
Another time in another place, because I love, I'll say it. A guy asked me, he goes, we're gonna do a little bit show tonight on an MMA and boxing. He goes, well, you used to box. And I said, I said, yeah, I did, but I'm not in it anymore like you guys. So it's still part of me, growing up throwing chingazos in the street.
That's right.
You can't get whooped up too much without wanting to fight a little bit, right?
Exactly,
And I did. And then when I was in the Army, I specifically went out to train to make myself a better hand-to-hand combatant. So what you guys do, whether you know it or not, if I haven't expressed it, it's really not just of interest, but it's a good thing for me, because I get to see you guys talking and educating especially young dudes now that are getting into the fight game in boxing or MMA. It's so critical that they know more.
Yeah,
and I'm going to be a little
for the
cheesy.
longevity.
And for the people that are in the industry that may not want to hear what I have to say, too bad, I'm going to say it anyway, because you can't stop it. But I really do err on the side of young people knowing more, educating themselves, and being able to make more of a penny off of getting your head knocked around a little bit. I honestly believe it. If it were my way, I'd take that money and give them a little bit more percentage, just because. Always err on the side of the little guy. But that's our show tonight. Thank you.
Thank
you, sir. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you guys being here. That's our show for you guys tonight. I hope you educate a little bit more on another aspect of SuperMex Nation. But I did tell you, we're like onions. That's a Shrek, right, in the green screen. Okay. We're like onions. We have layers. There's a lot of layers to SuperMex Nation. And so that you're clear and aware, there are a lot of Mexicans in this country, and we're kind of all over the American tapestry. We are involved in a lot of different things, and we have a lot of different interests. It's not just speaking Spanish or English. It's about being involved in what the American process is. These two gentlemen are definitely doing that. I try to, in my not so subtle and humble way, every night when we come up on air. But I want to thank you guys again. Thank you all for paying attention, watching. One more last plug. It's The Fighter's Voice. I do like the fact it's all one word. The Fighter's Voice. Hit them up, plug them. Go to their stop. Like them, share them, do what you got to do. I like what they do, so you should too. That's SuperMex Nation for tonight. Thank you very much.